Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cozy Archives, where the window is blinding us in this one in the background today because I simply couldn't record this at night. So I'm so sorry about that if you're watching, but however, we also read fanfic here. Usually we do Bakudeku, aka Bakugo and Deku from, I should say, obviously, Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo from My Hero Academia. I get all my stuff off of Ao3, just a side note there. And SatoSugu, aka Satoru Gojo and Suguru Geto. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say their full names. I always have problems with that. However, yes, this channel is where we read all that. If you're already subscribed, following on Spotify, subscribed on YouTube, you know that already. That's why you're here. So, I'm so excited to see the community growing. I talked about it in my last one, but oh my god, I'm so excited. I was really just like, I explained this in my last one, but I was so like, just thinking that this was going to be something that I was doing for fun to make myself make a little more time to read like fanfic and everything. That was, I don't know, I guess I was wrong because it's actually, people like it. So I'm so glad I can provide you something. Today we're doing a SatoSugu one, and hopefully guys, I didn't pick a absolute angsty sad one. I don't think so. I will be doing those in the future because a lot of one-shots from JJK are angsty sad. I don't know why that crowd loves it. I know that Gojo and Geto's ship are kind of based off of that angsty sadness, but don't we go to AO3 to kind of get like an alternate universe POV sometimes? Oh my god, everybody is obsessed with, I get the yearning. I get it. Totally. But it would be nice to have a few more out there. And if you guys are holding out on me and not telling me that about ones you know of, that you've read, that you love, that aren't like just yearning, they're a little more lighthearted and everything, please put it in the comments. Please, I'm begging you. It's been so hard for me to look for these. But today we have a almost 5,000 word one, so it's a little shorter than last time. One chapter, obviously. Mainly do one-shots on here. I actually did find one, though, that I think I'm gonna do a two-parter. It's got like 1,600 words, and I want to split it up into two parts because I think it's actually a really good one. It should be a little bit more on the slow burny side, so you guys would get an episode 2 weeks in a row of that one in two parts. Let me know if you're interested in that. Anyways, let's get into this. Coffee, no sugar, and other ways of saying I notice you. That's, the title is really what made me think like, okay, this one's not going to be sad or anything. It's by Wookzne, Wookzne. I don't even know how to say that. The summary is, no sugar, the neurologist said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Suguru stood motionless. There was something different about that detail. How did you know? He asked. Satoru shrugged. You never take it. The answer was simple, maybe too simple, and he didn't know why that information surprised him so much. Maybe because he didn't remember ever mentioning it, or maybe because he hadn't realized anyone was watching. The notes are, side note though, note from me. Let me look. Okay, this is an alternate universe one. Wow, so this is what I mean. Even when I do find one that's not angsty sad, it's in an alternate universe. But I literally just said we come here for that, so we're here for that. I really am trying to find out the most from this. Tired Geto, from the tags. They might both work in, oh, they're both doctors. Oh my god, I actually might love this. Okay. The author's notes. Hello, this is my first SatoSugu fanfic. Oh, yay. I used to write fan fiction years ago, and then suddenly I wanted to write one about these two because I just love them. This idea came to me randomly while I was watching Grey's Anatomy, of course, because I was literally just gonna say, like, why is this some Grey's Anatomy shit? Lol, it's just a one-shot, a light and cute story to heal us all. Yes, thank you. Doing God's work out here for the SatoSugu fam. Some few warnings. English is not my first language, so I sincerely apologize if you notice any spelling mistakes or anything else, and that is okay. Also, I don't study medicine and I'm not an expert. Everything I know comes from watching a lot of episodes of The Pits and Grey's Anatomy. So don't be surprised if you see something wrong, because I needed Google as well. Anyway, thank you for your attention and have a real good read. Yay! Oh my god, I'm so excited. Okay. Geto Suguru was no longer sure when he had last blinked. It was a sensation he knew well. Residency had turned exhaustion into a sort of permanent state. Something that had ceased to be perceived merely as a lack of energy and had become part of his body's very existence. Sleeping 6 hours felt like a luxury. 4 was a victory, 2 a possibility, and sometimes there was none at all. That night, however, Suguru felt he had crossed a threshold he hadn't even known existed. He had been at the hospital nearly 20 hours. Jesus Christ, dude, get out. Are you even treating the patients well? And I don't mean like abusing them, I mean like doing your job good. Like, how are you functioning? 20 hours, jeez. He had consumed too much coffee, eaten only a few cheap onigiri, the kind he always kept on hand for shifts, and spent so much time on his feet that he could no longer tell if the pain in his legs stemmed from back-to-back shifts or simply from existing. I would say it's from existing at that point. What are you talking about? How? Let me tell you, I don't care if this is Geto or not. I do not want him working on me 20 hours of sleep, 20 hours of work after 20 hours of being in the hospital. Why can I say that? Yeah, no thank you. I will come back another time so that you can treat me, because hell yeah. But 20 hours, I guess it was a little checkup, you know. But if he doing some surgery on me or something, I'm like, no. Get out of here. Get in bed. He stared at the wall. The clock read 3:17. He gazed at the numbers for a few seconds as the time seemed like a peculiar lie. Time passes differently in the hospital. Hours could vanish in seconds when dealing with an unstable patient. Aren't you an unstable patient at this point? While 5 minutes could feel like an eternity while waiting for test results. There were moments when he swore he had just arrived, and others when he felt he had been in that same hallway for a week. He slowly ran a hand over his face and rubbed his eyes, which were marked by deep, dark circles. Stubble was beginning to show faintly along his jawline, and his long dark hair was hastily tied back at the nape of his neck. With the few strands already coming loose around his face, his light blue shirt was rumpled beneath his white coat, and his ID badge hung crookedly from his pocket. I don't know why, my words are getting it's almost like gummy. What? That doesn't even make sense, Olivia. Suguru glanced at the medical chart he was carrying. Bed 14, then checked the watch again. He decided he needed coffee. Not because he likes it, actually. At this stage of his residency, coffee had ceased to be a beverage and had taken on the role of medication. He had simply gotten used to it. He rose from the plastic chair and walked to the doctor's break room. It was a small space tucked between two restricted access corridors. It featured a narrow window overlooking the parking lot, a white refrigerator that hummed continuously, and a coffee machine old enough to have witnessed generations of residents making the same mistakes. Suguru placed the chart on the counter, grabbed a plastic cup, stepped up to the small coffee machine, and pressed the button. The machine whirred. He watched the dark liquid slowly drip down. It was almost beautiful. Almost. Or maybe he is just insanely tired and starting to find everything special somehow. If you drink that, I'll have to take over your neurological case later. Suguru was startled by the sudden presence for a split second, but he quickly closed his eyes. He didn't need to look back. He would recognize that voice anywhere. Satoru Gojo had a strong knack for showing up whenever Suguru was at his most exhausted. God knows why. He turned slowly. The neurologist was standing in the doorway of the break room, one hand resting against the frame. Even at 3 in the morning, Satoru seemed to possess a reserve of energy that the rest of humanity simply lacked. His white hair was tousled, though not enough to look unkempt. His lab coat was unbuttoned over a dark gray shirt. The sleeves rolled up to his forearms. A stethoscope hung around his neck, and a blue pen peeked out of his breast pocket. Round glasses set atop his head pushed back his silky hair. I was simply going to say, oh my god. I was going to say simply instead of Suguru. I don't even know. Suguru never knew why the doctor always wore those glasses in the hospital, even at night. But he had the impression that Satoru simply enjoyed the attention anyway. I feel like he would. He would. Crystal blue eyes met dark ones, and he offered a faint, almost innocent smile. Suguru didn't trust that smile. If I drink this, he said, turning back to the machine, maybe I can finish my shift. Satoru walked in. The sound of his shoes echoed on the vinyl flooring as he approached. You call that coffee? Well, I call it fuel. That's concerning. Suguru picked up the cup. But before he could take a sip, Satoru reached out. The movement was so natural that it took Suguru a second to realize what was actually happening. No, Satoru said, holding onto the cup. Suguru didn't let go. The two of them stayed like that for a few seconds, each holding one side of the disposable cup. It's mine, he said. I know. So you're not drinking that, the neurologist answered. Suguru let out a sigh through his nose. He simply didn't have the energy to argue with the doctor, so he set the cup down. Satoru took it to the sink and poured out the contents. The exhausted resident watched the liquid disappear down the drain with an expression that likely revealed more suffering than that of any patient he had treated that night. You just threw away my only source of caffeine. Well, I have another. Satoru opened his backpack, took out a cup of coffee, and placed it in front of him. Suguru looked at the cup in confusion, raised his eyebrows, and shot the doctor a slightly skeptical look. I hope that was a can or a bottle, because how you keeping a whole coffee in your bag, honey? Well, it didn't say a can or a bottle, so I'm very, confused. No sugar, the neurologist said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Suguru stood motionless. There was something different about that detail. How did you know? He asked. Satoru shrugged. You never take it. The answer was simple, perhaps too simple, and he didn't know why that information surprised him so much. Maybe because he didn't remember ever mentioning it, or maybe because he hadn't realized anyone was watching. He picked up the cup. It was hot. The warmth Oh, I'm so stupid. The warmth seeping through his fingers. Thanks. Satoru offered only a faint smile. Guys, I'm stupid because don't they have warm vending machines? Bear with me. Oh my god. I totally forgot they have warm vending machines. Never mind. Okay. Now I know. Now I'm not as confused. Satoru offered only a faint smile. Suguru took a sip. It's good. but much better than the coffee from the old machine, and that irritated him slightly, for reasons he couldn't quite identify. Satoru pulled out a chair and sat down. The resident remained standing for a few seconds, as if he had forgotten that chairs existed, then sat down opposite him. The break room was quiet. On the other side of the wall, someone wheeled a gurney past. The sound of wheels slowly faded down the hallway. The hospital was silent in the early hours of the morning. Suguru rested his elbows on the table. Only then did he realize his eyes were closing. He blinked once, twice. On the third, he heard the neurologist ask in a low voice, "How much sleep have you had today?" Suguru opened his eyes. "I don't remember." Satoru didn't answer immediately. He just stared at him. There was no irony in that expression, and that was almost worse. Suguru took another sip of coffee and looked away. "I'm fine." Satoru let out a hoarse laugh. Oh my god. My dog is doing... Thank you. She was like panting really loudly. Suguru opened his eyes. "I don't remember." And then he said, "I'm fine." We already read that. Satoru let out a hoarse laugh. That phrase should be banned for residents. Suguru's mouth twitched slightly. Satoru noticed it quietly, but pretended not to. The tablet vibrated on the table, the sound cutting through the silence, and he picked up the device. The message was from the nursing station. "Bed 14, change in level of consciousness." The fatigue vanished, or at least was forced somewhere far away from his body. Suguru stood up immediately and grabbed the medical chart. Satoru rose as well. "I'll go with you." Suguru was about to say it wasn't necessary, but he was already walking toward the door, with the neurologist right behind him. The patient in bed 14. I wonder if this is actually like romantic. I forgot to like it was a ship, so yeah, I feel like it's romantic, but is it gonna have like a romantic ending? I'm wondering. The patient in bed 14 was a 68-year-old woman who had been admitted the previous afternoon after the sudden onset of speech difficulties and weakness on the right side of her body. The CT scan performed upon admission had shown no hemorrhage. The case was still being investigated as a possible... I'm not going to be able to say this. Oh, no. I was going to say cerebral, but it's cerebrovascular event. And the patient was being closely monitored. Guys, I also don't know hospital terms, so don't like come at me. When Suguru entered the room, her daughter was sitting by the bedside. The lights were dim and the woman appeared to be asleep, but there was something different. Suguru noticed it immediately. Her breathing was irregular and her vital signs showed no dramatic changes, but her level of alertness was clearly lower than before. He stepped closer. The daughter stood up and Suguru made a calming gesture with his hand to reassure her. "We're going to examine her." His voice was low but professional and steady. It was curious how his body knew how to perform certain functions even when his mind was exhausted. Suguru checked the patient's response to stimuli and assessed her speech, limb movements, and orientation. There was a change, not huge, but significant enough. He asked the daughter a few questions while repeating part of the exam. Satoru remained by the door. He didn't interfere, simply watching closely. When Suguru finished the initial assessment, he walked past the neurologist, and the two of them quietly stepped out into the hallway. When was the last time she was her usual self? The nurse checked the recorded time, just under an hour ago. Suguru frowned slightly, and Satoru stepped closer. "Let's repeat the assessment and discuss getting new imaging." Suguru nodded. From that moment on, everything happened quickly. Requests were made, the team was mobilized, and the patient was sent for further testing. Suguru oversaw the procedures, answering questions cautiously. verifying information and trying to organize his mind, everything that had changed since his mission. Satoru was by his side the whole time, watching him quietly, but that didn't bother him, quite the opposite. When a decision needed to be made, communication between them was almost eerily easy. Suguru would explain a piece of information, and Satoru would instantly grasp the implications. The neurologist would propose a hypothesis, and Suguru would immediately look for the data needed to confirm it. It was the kind of rapport. Oh, I think you're supposed to say that word like rapport that only emerged when two people thought in compatible ways. Suguru realized this and secretly liked it. He shouldn't have liked it quite so much. After the patient was taken away, he stood in the hallway for a few seconds. The adrenaline was slowly fading, and with it, a heavier fatigue returned. Satoru noticed. "You handled that well," the neurologist said. "Are you complimenting me?" "You could say that." A faint smile played on his lips. Suguru lowered his eyes to the medical chart. "Thank you, Dr. Gojo." It was simple, but for some reason, Satoru seemed pleased. He then murmured something about having some test results to check, let out a soft, barely perceptible sigh, and said, "It's Satoru, actually." Suguru didn't have time to reply. The neurologist had already disappeared down the quiet hallway, yet somehow he felt something different stirring in his chest. A feeling almost like comfort, and the corners of his mouth twitched upward before he even realized it. Gojo's over here risen up the doctors. Gojo is a doctor, but he's risen up the other doctors. He's like, "I don't need to rizz up my patients. I actually want to rizz up you." He's just mogging on his patients. At 4:76, or 4:76, I don't even know if that's a time. At 4:26, Suguru returned to the break room. This bitch needs to go home, bro. What are we doing here still? Go to your car, not the break room. He hadn't planned on staying there. Actually, he hadn't planned anything. He just needed to sit down. His body was starting to protest, and he could feel his legs silently struggling to keep him upright. He sat at the table and opened a pack of cookies he had found at the bottom of his backpack. The first one was broken. The second one, too. He ate 2 of them. Oh, he ate them anyway. I don't know where I got that. Because he didn't have the energy left to care. A few minutes later, the door opened. It was Satoru, carrying a folder in his left hand and a coffee in his right. Suguru glanced at the cup. I was just thinking, like, aren't there, like, so many vending machines around, like, hospitals? Why doesn't, like, Geto just go get one from a vending machine, you know? Maybe he doesn't like the ones from there, let's just say that. "Are you planning to do this all night?" Satoru set the coffee down on the table. "Maybe." Suguru picked up the cup. He didn't say thank you this time. Satoru didn't seem to expect it either, and sat down beside him. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. It was a quietness different from the one in the hallways, more intimate, comfortable. Perhaps because no one was there. Perhaps because no one there was demanding anything of them. There were no medical charts, no alarms, no patients calling out, just the distant sounds of the hospital at work and the rhythmic breathing of the 2 men. Suguru leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a few seconds. He could feel the weight of his head. "You should eat something real." Satoru's voice was low. Suguru opened his eyes. "Is that an order?" "It's a suggestion." "You give too many suggestions." "You ignore too many suggestions." Suguru's lips twitched before he realized it, then softened slightly. He looked at the coffee in his hand, and the words slipped out before he could think twice. "Why neurology?" he asked. The question had escaped without a plan. Satoru seemed surprised, not by the question itself, but maybe by the fact that the resident was the first person to ask him something so personal. The doctor remained silent for a few seconds, then said, "Because the brain is the most absurd thing we know." I feel like Gojo definitely would be like, "Let me on up in that brain." Or would it be actually Geto? Because, Kenjaku. Suguru looked up. Satoru was already gazing at the glasses held between his hands. His expression had shifted almost imperceptibly. He looked serious. Suguru didn't think he had ever seen him wear that look before. And somehow, it captured his attention in a different way. Look, guys, you guys know you're not here for, the reading. Well, you are, but, you're not here for professional reading. You can spend a lifetime studying and still discover you know almost anything. You don't know, I think it meant. You can spend a lifetime studying and still discover you don't know almost anything. Oh my god, guys. You know almost nothing. Why was I reading nothing is anything? And I literally just made the remark about how I'm not a professional reader. Suguru remained quiet as the neurologist continued. A tiny alteration can change the way someone speaks, walks, remembers, or recognizes people. Sometimes it even changes a person's very perception of themselves. He looked up, and yet it remains the same brain. Suguru studied his face carefully. There was something different about Satoru when he spoke of neurology. The irritating confidence didn't vanish completely, but it took a new form. It was passion, sincere and almost quiet. "I like the part where we have to put the pieces together," Suguru said after a few seconds. Satoru tilted his head. "Is that why you chose medicine?" "It's different." "Then why?" Suguru thought in silence for a moment. There was no short answer. Maybe there never had been. He remembered the beginning, the first classes, the fear of not being good enough, the late nights studying until his eyes burned. He remembered the feeling of discovering something that had once seemed impossible, the first patients. The first moment someone had trusted him. "Because I like the idea of being able to make a difference," he answered. It was a simple answer. It was a simple answer, but a sincere one. Satoru didn't make a joke. He simply looked at him and nodded. And it was perhaps the first time that night that Suguru felt he was truly being heard. At 5:08, the morning early hours began to lose their grip. The hospital never truly slept, but that window between 3 and 5 a.m. held a distinct quiet. After 5, the building began to stir. Morning shifts arrived, and the elevators grew busier. Suguru returned to the nurses' station. There were no progress notes to write, results to check, and outstanding tasks to organize. Then why are you here? Why? Why are they not sending him home then? I know, we wouldn't have this fic without it, but I'm just over here wow, slavery. Residency was a cycle of endless small chores. Finish one and another was already waiting. Complete a prescription and a call would come in. Hang up and someone would need an assessment, and so the time slipped by. Satoru stopped by a few times, though he never stayed long. Sometimes he'd just walk past the station and ask a quick question. Other times, he'd drop off a coffee. I need to slow down. Once, he simply left a cereal bar on the desk without a word. Suguru looked at the snack, then at the doctor. "You didn't have to." Satoru was already walking away. He glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes holding an expression that was almost amused, yet restrained. "I know." With that, he left. Suguru felt the familiar warmth in his chest and tucked the bar into his backpack. Later, he realized he had already eaten it. Later he realized he had already eaten it. Huh. Or, like, did he leave the wrapper there then? I think he meant, like, he ate it quickly. I'm gonna take it as that. Because I don't know why Gojo would be like, here, have my wrapper. I was gonna say, this is very cute. I love this whole concept and everything. However, I was going to say, what was I going to say? I do like the different things that they said. This is like a very delayed note on this, but the way that like Suguru thinks about it and why he went into the profession, and the way that Satoru thinks about it and why he went into the profession. That was like, I think they did like a very good job at that. Like, I know they said they wrote fanfics before, but this is really good. Like, it's very easy to read too. I'm very excited about it. Dude, 508. Okay. Now we're at 545. The resident was reviewing a medical chart when he realized he was reading the same line for the third time. Yeah. You're done. You're done. That's what Gojo needs to say to him. You're done. He blinked. Read it. Read it again. Nothing. The information simply wouldn't sink in. He let out a deep breath through his nose and pressed his hand to his temples. I love how they're like brain doctors, but he's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the emotional collapse that I'm having right now. It was a familiar sensation. His body was still functioning, but his mind was starting to shut down. That was when someone pulled up a chair beside him. Satoru. He said nothing, simply placing a bottle of water on the table in front of him. Suguru looked at the bottle. Are you keeping an eye on me? Yes. The answer came with a sly smile. He opened a bottle and took a sip of water. He didn't argue. After a few seconds, the neurologist asked about the patient in bed 14. Suguru explained in detail what had been done and what the next steps were. Satoru listened closely. He never corrected or interrupted him. You think fast. Suguru rested his chin on his hand. I'm tired. I can see that. That seems contradictory. Not necessarily. Satoru leaned slightly across the table and smiled. You can be tired and still good. Suguru fell silent. The words struck a chord he hadn't expected. Because there were weeks when he felt like he was constantly falling short. Not in any obvious way. There were no grave errors, no major failures. It was something subtler. The feeling that he could be doing more, reading more, knowing more, sleeping less. Residency seemed to turn everything into comparison. There was always someone who knew something he didn't, or perhaps everyone was just better at faking it than he was. Suguru had never told anyone that. He didn't need to. Satoru seemed to have noticed anyway. You should sleep more, he said. Suguru let out a weary laugh. Well, I'll put that on my schedule, Satoru. The neurologist's eyes widened briefly at hearing his first name, but he quickly adopted a calm expression. Good idea. Suguru smiled because this time he simply couldn't hide it. Satoru smiled even more. I love how, like, Gojo has this little crush on him, and he keeps, like, popping in and being like, here you go, and taking care of him. Like, oh, it's such, like, yes, that's totally what would happen, I feel like. At 6:15, Suguru finished up his last remaining tasks. The hospital no longer felt the same. Natural light was beginning to stream through the windows. The harsh white corridors' lights seemed less aggressive, and the world was regaining its color. Suguru closed the final patient chart. For a few seconds, he simply stared at his own hands. He felt empty, not sad, but not exactly happy either. Just completely exhausted. He carefully put the paperwork away, grabbed his backpack, and walked past the break room. The door was open. Satoru was there, sitting by the window and gazing at the horizon with a serious yet calm expression. The sky was beginning to brighten behind him. Rays of light caught his white hair, and his blue eyes took on a crystalline hue. Beautiful. I feel like by that point right now, Gato's like in that high exhaustion where it's like, you like feel high almost. And then Gojo's like, yes, this is a perfect time to make my move because he's probably in that state and my rizzing would be very good. Like, I don't know if you've ever, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Stayed up so late that you're like, and like, actually, you guys probably know the best because what I'm thinking about is when I would stay up late and read like fanfic when I was younger, and then I wake up and like I'm totally obsessed with whoever I was reading the fanfic about, or like was stalking in pictures and edits and stuff about. I know you guys know that feeling. Suguru shuddered at the thought. You're still here. Satoru turned his head. You too. Suguru stepped inside, though he didn't know why. Maybe because he didn't want to leave just yet. Maybe because it was the first place all night where no one was asking anything of him. He pulled up a chair and sat down across from the doctor. Satoru followed the movement with his eyes. He looked back toward the window. Are you going home now? That's the plan, Suguru said. Are you going to sleep? I hope so. Satoru smiled. See you tomorrow, then. Suguru stood up. His backpack weighed on his right shoulder, and his whole body was crying out for his bed. I bet. Before leaving, he glanced at Satoru again, and that was when he noticed something. Satoru was smiling at him. It wasn't the teasing smile he always wore in the hallways, nor the one that appeared when he cracked a lame joke. It was a broad, serene smile, revealing all his teeth. And for some reason, Suguru felt an overwhelming urge to smile back, so he did. See you tomorrow, Satoru. He walked toward the door. Suguru. Suguru's hands paused on the doorknob. It was the first time he had been addressed that way. No surname, no formality, just his first name. Yet, Satoru's tone carried an added layer of meaning. Something he couldn't quite name, and he liked it a lot. He turned his head. Satoru was sitting exactly where he had been before. Good morning, the neurologist said. Suguru gazed at him for a few seconds. Then he smiles, his eyes crinkling shut. Good morning. That was so cute. That was so cute. Oh my god. The parking lot was nearly empty when Suguru left the hospital. The morning air was cold. He paused for a moment before getting into his car. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the city was already beginning to light up. Suguru placed his backpack on the passenger seat and sank heavily into the driver's seat. He rested his head against the steering wheel and closed his eyes. God, he was exhausted. His body ached, his mind felt sluggish. He just needed sleep, needed to eat. Yet there was something different about the morning, a small, almost imperceptible feeling. As if a part of him had awakened just when the rest of him was too tired to go on. He thought about the coffee, the old machine, the patient in bed 14, the conversation in the break room, the cereal bar quietly left on his desk, and inevitably the moment he had heard his name, Suguru. Maybe it didn't mean anything. It probably didn't, because Satoru was like that with everyone. Or maybe not. He started the car. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he glanced back at the hospital building one last time. The thought of returning there in a few hours should have been unbearable. Usually it was. But that morning, it didn't feel quite that way. Maybe because for the first time in a long while, there was something waiting for him beyond just work. It wasn't a promise, nor a certainty. I'm so sorry. I just burped right in the middle. Ugh, just a possibility. And maybe that was exactly what made it all so interesting. Gojo Satoru. Hello. Hi. She's just like, I need your full attention, by the way. Um, no, what was I gonna say? I was reading like so beautifully, I think I thought before that, and then I just burped right in. Like, good going. Okay, where are we going with this? We're almost to the ending, so like, I'm interested. That night, Suguru slept for 4 hours. Oh my god, dude. Take the melatonin, dude. It wasn't enough, to be honest. It never was. Yeah, you were up for like 24 hours. I wouldn't think it would be enough. You just regained back like 4 of that. He woke up before his alarm, stared at the ceiling for a few seconds, and tried to remember where he was. The apartment was quiet, morning light filtered through the curtains. For a moment, he didn't know what day it was. Then slowly it came back to him. Shift, hospital, residency, Satoru. That last thought surfaced before he could stop it. Suguru closed his eyes again. Damn it. Just before leaving, he found himself looking for another granola bar in the kitchen. He paused, remembering he had another one in his backpack, and smiled to himself. I think what the author meant back then was he hadn't eaten it. Like, he realizes later he hadn't eaten it. Because now he's, like, saying that it's still in his backpack. So, maybe that's why. At 10:53 p.m., Suguru was back at the hospital. God damn. His shift hadn't even officially started yet. He was already tired. He walked down the main corridor, greeted a few people, and stowed his backpack in his locker. When he reached the nurse's office, he found a cup of coffee waiting on the desk. No sugar. So cute. Beside it lay just a small folded piece of paper. Suguru opened it. The handwriting was slanted and sloppy, unmistakable. Don't drink the one from the machine. He's like, if you frickin' drink that one. He glanced down the hallway. Satoru was on the other side, talking casually to a nurse as if he hadn't done a thing. As if he hadn't left coffee for him. As if he didn't know Suguru was watching. Then Satoru looked up. They locked eyes. Satoru smiled. Suguru shook his head but grinned broadly. Maybe residency would remain exhausting. Maybe the next shift would be worse than the last. Or maybe the night would end with another sleepless dawn, another strong coffee, and a massive stack of patient charts. Probably. But now, there was one small difference. There was a presence that made the corridors feel less cold. A voice that appeared in the break room at 3 a.m. An unsweetened coffee waiting on the table, and someone who apparently noticed him, even when he didn't realize it. Suguru took the first sip. It was good, really good. And for the first time since starting his residency, he realized he didn't hate the idea of the next shift quite so much. That familiar warmth he had wanted to put a name to was now constantly present in his chest. But maybe he already knew the answer. Suguru. He looked up from his coffee. Satoru was standing in the doorway of the break room. This time, there was no joke, just that calm smile Suguru secretly kept in his restless mind. And he realized with most frightening clarity that maybe the problem had never been exhaustion, that the issue was simply the fact that, when he was near Satoru, he finally found a reason to stay awake. This time, he didn't force the thought away. He consciously embraced it. The neurologist said nothing more. He simply stood in the doorway, looking at Suguru with that calm gaze that had become dangerously familiar. Suguru held his gaze for a few seconds, then realized his heart was racing faster than usual. Or maybe it had been doing so ever since the old coffee machine. and he had simply known it all along. Satoru walked cautiously and unhurriedly toward the table. He stopped in front of Suguru and rested a hand on the back of the empty chair beside him. Suguru followed the movement with his eyes. For a few moments, neither could find anything to say. The hospital continued to function around them. A phone rang in the hallway, someone called out for a nurse, the elevator announced its arrival. But inside that small break room, it felt as though the two of them were the only ones in the hospital. Suguru lowered his gaze to his cup. "Do you do this on purpose?" Satoru tilted his head slightly. "Do what?" "Keep showing up." A wide, roguish smile spread across Satoru's face. That smile. "Maybe." Suguru took a deep breath. He had spent too long pretending not to notice. The coffee, the messages, the encounters in the break room, and the way Satoru always found an excuse to linger for a few extra minutes. The way he said his name, even if it was just a simple word. He was probably too tired to keep up the pretense. Or maybe, for the first time, he didn't want to. Suguru looked up. Satoru was close, leaning over the table. Closer than usual. His smile slowly faded. Neither of them moved at first. It was Suguru who closed the distance. Are they gonna... The kiss happened slowly, almost hesitantly. Unhurried, without any certainty about what could come next. Just a silent acknowledgement of something they had both sensed for quite some time. Suguru's hand found the back of Satoru's neck, his fingers tangling in the pale strands of his hair. The touch made Satoru smile against the kiss before closing his eyes again. He reached up to Suguru's dark hair, brushing a few stray locks away from his face. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, their foreheads remained resting against each other. Suguru let out a low, husky laugh. "Well, that's going to make the upcoming shifts very complicated." Satoru pretended to give it serious thought. "Yeah, probably." Suguru shook his head. "You don't look worried." "I am." "You don't look it." "Well, I am trying to maintain my reputation." Suguru laughed. The sound felt different after so many hours of silence and cold corridors. It was a relief. Satoru pulled up a chair and sat beside him. For a few seconds they just sat there, with no need to decide what it meant, no need to turn the moment into a promise. They had time for that. When Suguru's tablet buzzed, he glanced at the screen and let out a weary sigh. Satoru stood up. Shift, shift. Suguru picked up the patient chart, but before he could leave, Satoru gently held his arm. Suguru looked at him. "After this consult," the neurologist said. "Coffee?" Suguru raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you just get me coffee?" "This one's different." "How so?" Satoru smiled. "This one comes with company." Suguru tried not to smile. He failed miserably. "Fine." Then left the break room together. The hallway was bathed in the first light of morning. More people were arriving at the hospital, and the world was starting up again. And Suguru knew he was still tired, very tired. He would likely still be tired the next day. Residency wouldn't get any easier. Shifts wouldn't get any shorter. There would be long nights, bad coffee, endless medical charts, and the moments when his body begged for rest. But from then on, perhaps there would also be something waiting for him at the end of those early morning hours. A sugarless coffee, a voice calling his name, a smile in the hallway. Satoru. Suguru walked beside him as the elevator doors closed. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to count how many hours were left in his shift. He simply stayed in the moment. And when Satoru discreetly leaned his shoulder against Suguru's on their way to the next patient, Suguru realized that some early mornings didn't need to be endured. Some simply needed to be savored, especially when, between shifts, there was someone waiting for for you in a tiny room, holding a cup of coffee. That was so cute. Oh my god, I loved that. This was so cute. And it was beautifully written too. Oh my gosh. Wow. I actually they really hit it with this one. Definitely getting a kudos. Yeah, I keep saying wow, but I just really liked it. I need to find, because I'm realizing I need to find more like this. I actually need to find some more alternate universe ones. I loved this. The notes are at the bottom. Thank you for your attention. As I said, just a simple one shot, but who knows, maybe I'll write more stories. I don't know, I will think about it. I hope you enjoyed it. Smiley face. If they don't write more, I am going to do something. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, guys, go leave this one a kudos, because, oh my god, it's so good. 4,900 words felt like a long time today, but I'm just gonna say that was probably because my dog is being a little terrorist in the back scenes back here. There was many times where she interrupted me, and also many times where she was fighting with my cat in the background. But you know, if I don't put her in her crate for quiet time while I'm doing this, that's usually what happens. So I'm not saying I didn't expect it, but yeah. Sometimes I'm like, hey, she's sleeping on the floor. I'm just gonna go in there and do that thing. No. She's like, no. Wow. This was the perfect of everything. I loved the attentiveness that Gojo had to Geto, and how he was sleeping and everything. In the little acts, I feel really talk to their actual relationship. Gojo would definitely be a gift giver. He's gonna spoil the hell out of you. Geto definitely would really pay attention to being given gifts, which I think is why they complement each other so well. But yeah, this was so good. I'm so glad you guys took the time to come here and listen. If you listened all the way through, why not follow? Why not subscribe? I'm on YouTube, and I'm also on Spotify. Yeah, and like I said, or at least I forgot to say at the beginning of this one, but I'm gonna say it anyways. At the ending and the beginning, I usually always say I put the link in the description to every fanfic that I read. In each one, obviously, like I said in the description, will be the link, so you can go there and give it your own kudos and your own click on it so it does get a hit. Because I do not want to take away any credit from the authors or any of that. So if you have time while you're watching my videos, please, 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 if you liked it, go and give it a kudos, and at least go give it a hit. Maybe save it to a later, like this one, because you might want to read it again later. This one was so cute. I might actually read it again later. You know how letting yourself forget it and then going back and oh yeah, I remember this one. I make those lists. Yes, I do. But yes, go give it a kudos and join my channel. Come with me again to read more. I have a lot more on here, and I'm going to be making a lot more. Leave a suggestion in any of the comments. I know some people are suggesting Bakudeku ones, certain alternative universe or Omega verses and stuff like that. You can also leave that in the Gojo Geto ones so that I know what you guys are looking for. Like I said, I'm going to possibly be doing 2 or 3 parters, so look out for that. And yeah, if you want to look out for it, then make sure you follow. Yeah, I think that's about it for today. I know I hadn't recorded a Gojo Geto one in a while, so I'm so sorry. But one of the things is like it's so hard to find, like I said in the beginning, one for to read on here without it being like sad or whatever. I'm also going to still keep reading the angsty sad ones, but I do want to sprinkle a little bit of these in between. So thank you for coming in today. I'm sending you guys all the love, and yeah, I will probably see you next time.